All right, so we are joined from Washington, D.C. by the one and only Kayla Walter, the financial life coach, as she says it, and also is a graduate of Louisiana State University, just like yours truly. We thank you so much for joining us. This is our personal finance class here at Velma Jackson, and we are recording this for our friends at Madison Central High School, Germantown High School, Ridgeland High School, and for our YouTube channel. And I almost forgot, and our friends at the Academic Option Center. So thank you so much for joining us. And I know we got a lot to talk about as far as finance, and we got a lot of great questions from the students that range from 9th to 12th grade. But before we get into any of that, we're really big on college readiness. And as we just mentioned, you have a degree, undergraduate and master's degree from LSU in finance, which is obviously one of my alma maters as well. And we all know about LSU athletics. It's a lot of fun to watch. It's a great party atmosphere. But the academic requirements at LSU is unlike most schools in the South. So why don't we talk a little bit about your experience at LSU and how that led to you getting into your own business there in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah. So when it comes to LSU academics, so in Louisiana, I know you guys are in Mississippi, but in Louisiana, there's like a state-sponsored program that helps kids with tuition. And there was a statistic, and I'm not sure how it works now. Obviously, I am a little bit removed from college and doing the whole FAFSA situation, but the statistic was like 1/3 of all college freshmen would lose their tuition assistance within the first semester. Like that was just the first semester. And so I was determined not to be one of those students who lost my assistance, because I fell into that very awkward position of, you aren't poor enough for government assistance, but your parents make too much money. So you have to technically pay for it. And that's where I know a lot of people find themselves, like, your parents actually can't pay for it, but you can't get assistance to help you. So just falling in that unhappy medium. But
That's
what I like to say,
common tale in the Black community. It's a very common tale in the Black community.
Yes, very. So our parents get these decent jobs, but they don't have anybody in their corner advocating for them on like what to do with the funds, especially, when they start having kids and starting from the beginning. So it's just a really awkward spot to be in. But what I learned my freshman year at LSU is that you have a triangle. And I tell new people this all the time. You have a triangle of the 3 S's. I'm not doing the Illuminati sign. This is just your three S's. You're either going to sleep, study, or have a social life. You can't do all 3 excellently. Like, it's not going to happen. You pick 2. You can occasionally dabble with the 3, with the other one, but you're not going to balance all 3 in a way that you just think like, oh yeah, I'm going to sleep, I'm going to have a great social life, and I'm still going to pass all of my classes. It's not going to happen. So I personally chose to dabble occasionally with the social life part outside of like attending football games. And I was going to sleep because I just prefer to sleep. And I was going to study, because you're not going to perform well on a lack of sleep and high off of Red Bulls and Adderall. Like, it's just not going to happen. So that's pretty much what the game plan is. In a school as big as LSU, the academic requirements are high, but the pressure to attend something, because there's literally something going on every single night on campus, is also high. But you just have to make those adult decisions on whether, like, am I living for today, or am I living to get to the next level beyond LSU? Because the only reason why LSU's degree requirements are so vast, and because they love to say this, like, we make you take the general sciences and the humanities and all this stuff because they want to graduate well-rounded students. And it makes sense, because the average person, you're going to go into college and you're going to change your major once or twice, if not more. Like, my friends changed their major multiple times. I'm probably a rare student that never changed my major. Like, I came in and graduated with the exact thing that I went in for. But typically, you're going to change your major, and having those like general sciences and humanities and stuff kind of out of the way leaves your later years, like your junior and senior year, for you to go deeper into concentrated study. So, yeah.
And all the more reason to consider community college. I know Louisiana has a pretty good community college system, but Mississippi does as well, with ACT scholarships, where you could get just with a 20 on the ACT, able to qualify for some with full tuition. So there are,
Yeah, and I mean, if you can do that at a community college or junior college for half the cost, do it, because that's all. Like your freshman and sophomore year, all you're going to be doing is taking like these general classes, unless you were able to do some type of dual enrollment while in high school, where you got those 15 or 30 credits. So you technically come in as a sophomore or something like that.
so, and then you got a degree, you got a master's in finance as well at LSU, and then moved to Washington, D.C. So you started, and you started in the financial business. So talk a little bit about why you got into that and what type of things you do as a financial expert.
Yeah. So, just starting from the beginning, I had no idea what this business was when I was in college or in y'all's shoes as students. I thought I was just going to move into accounting. Um, because that's what I saw. Like one of my favorite teachers in high school, she was the accounting teacher. I loved hanging out in her classroom. We had amazing parties and all kinds of stuff. But the minute she was like, "You did this journal ledger wrong. Like you're gonna have to erase everything and start over again," I was like, "Yeah, I can't do this." So got to LSU, still majoring in finance. Just happened to be walking around the finance department and got introduced to this new program that was there, that would allow me to look into the world of financial planning. Never heard of it. But I was just like, okay, cool. I'm open to learning, and started going through all of these personal finance classes and literally learning like the information that people with money, like real money, are privy to, and just seeing like the discrepancies in information and how normal everyday people wouldn't even know to think about this. Like you don't know what a donor advised fund is. You don't know what didn't even the term ultra high net worth or high net worth was not even in my vocabulary at the time. Like I didn't know that there was classes to this, or even that you could work with private foundations and people who have just these massive amounts of money that you are privy to seeing every single day and making decisions for, at that. And so getting to know about it, and then finally getting a job and coming up here and actually working with people who were considered high net worth, and looking at portfolio like 7 and 8 figure portfolios every day and seeing what they were invested in. It's an eye-opening experience, because they're like, oh, there's really people out here who have this much money, and it's like, what was I doing with my life before? It's like, why didn't I know this? But it's a whole new world of getting into it and just really learning how they think. Because one thing for sure is people who have a lot of money think a lot differently than people who are working every single day for, just like working, looking for their next paycheck. The differences in thoughts and how they move, like the actions they take are also different. So whereas most people, working individuals would try to avoid debt, or they take on, um, debt for typical purchases, or avoid credit cards, stuff like that. You move over into the wealthy sector, they're like, how much is that debt going to cost me? Like, all right, cool. If the debt's not going to cost me anything, then I'm going to take it and I'll deploy my capital elsewhere. Or, the credit card, it's like, I have the money, but why would I use my actual cash to pay for something when I could put it on a credit card and get cash back or points to do something else? So like the thought processes are completely different. And so kind of what led to me just moving, I guess, like um, out of more structured environment and into something a little bit more independent, is really just the need to be like, okay, this information has to get down the line
Absolutely.
somehow, some way, somewhere. And that's where I'm just like, okay, I guess that's my mission, is to help to get this information to the people who need it. Because for me, growing up, I felt like I didn't grow up around people like my parents. They didn't make like trash income. They weren't like barely surviving or anything like that. It's like I know a lot of people who make really decent income. They just don't know what to do with it. And that's the case for a lot of people. If you fall in that awkward medium like me, it's like your families don't make bad income. They just don't know what to do with it. And having somebody who knows knows the system and knows how it works and how you could best be utilizing what you have is really key. Because I mean, even like Robert Kiyosaki says all the time, it's not about how much you make or how much you earn, it's about how much you keep, and learning how to do right. I mean, even if you're just making a little bit versus the person making a lot, because I've also encountered plenty of people who make half a million dollars a year and they are broke, and that's because they match their expenses with their income. So just learning what to do when you have a little and then growing and still doing right is what will put you in the right position.
Yeah, and you hit on the fact that you weren't educated on these things when you were coming up, and these kids want to act like this stuff is stupid or boring, and you know, and sometimes it can be, but the importance of it cannot be measured, because you said yourself the discrepancy of the information that's not being passed down is huge. Because we actually had a guest that said the exact same thing you just said. They were African immigrants and were preyed on by credit card companies, and they were a nurse anesthetist and a nurse practitioner. They were making a lot of money, but they still found themselves in a few $100,000 of debt because they were not educated on how things worked. So
Mm-hmm.
even little things, even, you know, and I tell them all the time, you know, I'm far from an expert, but I also know that I'm more worried about down the line. So little things like matching, if a company is going to match a contribution to a retirement account, you're out of your mind if you don't put in the max. Doing little deferred incomes, just small things like that. So when these kids getting ready to get out of high school, even if the ones that don't want to go to college, what are the most important things that you would say aren't being passed down for them to know?
Number one, I would say like delayed gratification is huge. Um, just the reality of it is everything you think you need, you don't. And then half the time you're going to get it and it's pointless because you might use it once or twice, or you'll value it that one or two times, and then you're going to sit it down. When I think back to stuff, I just think about the amount of money I've wasted on just dumb stuff, just really dumb stuff. And it's like, wow, you know, I probably could have went somewhere else. I could have invested somewhere. I could have turned that into like an asset instead of letting it be a liability and going to something that I never used, just thought I wanted so bad, and now I don't use. Like I literally was like everything, you know, now that I'm post college and I have like an apartment and all that stuff, I ask for different kinds of things. So like when my parents ask me what I want for Christmas, like a vacuum, pay a bill, you know, something with utility. But I remember I asked for like a Ninja blender. It's like $100 blender. Asked for like a food processor, all that stuff. I just could not see my life without it. It sits on my counter. Like it just sits on my counter. I have like so many gadgets that I thought I just wanted. I just needed them so bad because when I didn't have it, I had a million ideas of what I could do with it. And now I got it and I don't do anything with it. So that's just the story, you know, the story of life. It's like there are so many things you think you need that you don't. So delayed gratification is huge. Second thing is really like keep your eyes focused on your lane. Don't let your eyes go over here. Don't let your eyes go over here because comparison kills. And anytime you are comparing where you are in your life to what you think you should be, I know there's plenty of people who maybe y'all's age who have started some type of clothing business or shoe business, whatever. And if you live your life constantly thinking you're behind and always playing catch up, you'll always be broke. So, you know, really keep your eyes steady and focused on what you are doing, what you are trying to build, what you're trying to get out of your life, and keep your eyes from deviating to seeing other people. Because the more you think you're behind, like I said, you're going to keep trying to play catch up and you're going to end up broke. It's just like keeping up with the Joneses and the Rockefellers and the Marriotts. You can't keep up with them because they got systems in place that built their wealth. And if you're trying to build, you know, it's basically like trying to, you know, build Legos and on sand. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, and I think a big part of that too is, especially in minority communities, is these student loan companies. They're saying, look, you can be a first generation college student. You need to go to this fancy school and take out this big student loan when they aren't really educated on the amount of debt that really creates. And we've talked about that a lot in here, and I'm never going to stop talking on it because I don't know how student loans are even legal. It's the actual absolute racket. So talk a little bit about what you've seen people falling in traps in that, because it can be absolutely detrimental to somebody's wealth building.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say like student loans are completely terrible, because obviously when they released it, it had a purpose.
Yeah.
It's just that things have gotten way out of hand. And I think a lot of these for-profit institutions have taken advantage of the fact that now people get assistance with college so they can just continue raising the price of tuition. So it's like, if we want to solve the student loan crisis, we need to get a handle on these universities with how much they're charging, because, you know, $70,000, $80,000 a semester, it's wildly insane, but people are paying for it. I mean, I talk to people quite often who have, some people who have, you know, a decent amount of debt for the degree in which they wanted. You know, it's not unheard of. If you want to go to law school, you might come out with a couple $100,000 worth of debt. It's not unheard of. Why? Because in your first year as associate, you're probably going to make anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 anyway. It's not completely unheard of. Lawyers do it all the time. But if you're going to law school and then you decide, I don't want to be a lawyer anymore, I want to, you know, go be an art teacher or in, you know, community activist or something like that. Now you got $200,000 worth of debt. And it's like, your chances of paying that back are a little slim to none. And even relying on stuff like public service loan forgiveness, it's such a shot in the dark. And a lot of people don't realize when they do that. So like when you go to school and you rack up the 100,000 or whatever amount of debt, and you come out and you're working for something that's paying you less than half of that, you're just like, oh, I'm going to ignore it. I'm going to pay the minimum. I'm going to keep it on forbearance. I'll wait my 10 years and then I'll get public service loan forgiveness. A lot of people also end up getting bit in the butt in that 10th year, in which maybe the loan does get forgiven, but the amount that got forgiven is now considered taxable income to you. And so now you don't have the loan, but you got a big old tax bill because they just forgave $100,000. And so now that's considered income. So that's moved you up the tax bracket. And now you got to pay, now you owe the federal government, well, the IRS really, you know, a bunch of money for that. So really being diligent with being cognizant with your student loans. Like if you have to take it and it's solely for the purpose of school, take it for what you need it for, give back anything you don't need. And, you know, get your degree, go on about your business, get your job and work and pay it off. But don't just take the money just to say, I have money, because I've seen people do wild things with refund checks, wild things with student loans. Like, just be smart about it and have a purpose, like go in focused.
Yeah. And like you said, don't go balling out with your refund check, because that's technically money that you've already borrowed. And I see people do that all the time. Now, something else that we see a lot of young people fall into are the credit cards. And one thing I always say, you know, these stores, you know, especially these young ladies that like to shop, you go in there, you can get 10% off today if you sign up for the store credit card. That's a very easy trap to fall into. And even though some of these say they're student credit cards, they're not really telling you the whole story on their interest rates and things like that. So talk a little bit about what you've seen people fall into traps on that.
Yeah, I mean, with the credit cards, it's pretty simple. You'll get the promo rate. You'll think you pay it off. Oh, I got 12 months. Oh, I got 15 months or 18 months, whatever, to pay it off. Reality is you're probably never going to pay it off because your habits won't allow you to do that. But it's just there's just no point in getting a store credit card. Not even to save the 10 or 20%, because your interest is going to probably start around whatever amount of money you saved. So it actually doesn't matter. But what I've seen more recently, honestly, it isn't the store credit cards, it's the buy now, pay later that's been getting so many people, like the Klarna, Affirm, and all these other services where you can get whatever you want to get now and pay it back over 4 payments or 6 payments or something like that. And that's what really is killing people's bank accounts now, because they haven't accounted for the fact that it's like, oh yeah, I got the clothes, but now I actually got to pay for the clothes. Like, that's what I've honestly seen really getting people and literally causing their accounts to overdraft because they forgot these payments were coming out.
Yeah. And then they don't even think about what the interest rate is on those. Again,
Yeah.
I saw some stats that almost 40% of retail stores revenue is based solely off the interest rates on credit cards. That is absolutely mind boggling. And I think they really, and again, keeping up with the Joneses, you want to wear what somebody else is wearing. You don't have the money right now. You put it on that store credit card and they hit you with a 35% interest rate on the low end.
Yeah.
So that is
Yeah.
just absolutely killer. Now, I do have some questions from the students I want to get to. But before we do that, I do want to talk about one more thing, is that being an entrepreneur. And I know you're not a full-time entrepreneur, but you are an entrepreneur. And I think a lot of young people think that that's just a way to easy riches. And one thing that drives me crazy, and I'm such a big fan of her music, but the way Jasmine Sullivan has just made it where I'm going to start a business and it's going to be all easy in life, that really makes me mad. But that's just a small beef I have with her. She's still great. But, I don't think young people understand the legwork and the investment that goes in to even being a part-time entrepreneur. So talk a little bit about the startup cost and the amount of time you must invest before you really ever see a profit.
Yeah. So back to what I was saying about keep your eyes in your own lane, because these people on Instagram and stuff will have you thinking they built whatever they've achieved in less than a year or maybe even 2 years. But the reality of it is, when you start going down the rabbit hole of entrepreneurship, it costs a lot of money to get started. And it doesn't even matter what business you're entering into, whether it might be a product-based business, you want to do shoes, whatever, you got to pay for your inventory. You have to pay for production, all, designs, logos, all that stuff. And even if it's just a service-based business, you have to pay for your system. So whether that's a CRM, your system to even output the product, a way for you to stay in communication with your clients, a way for you to deliver, your deliverables to them. It's a lot of money in entrepreneurship. And Jasmine Sullivan, even though she's now on the big stage now, it's like Jasmine was a small artist when I was in school. But she's been in the game for a long time. And most people kind of see coming in on the end story, but she's been in the game for a very long time. It's the same with the artist Her. She's been signed since she was like 16 years old, but people are just now hearing about her. But yeah, there's so much. There's an analogy. It's like a photo of, if you take an iceberg, for example, just like think of like a glacier or something. You see the top part and you think like, oh, that's huge. But what you don't see is like the massive underbody of everything that went into the small portion that you see up here. It takes a lot of work on there is not one single person I know. Like, people may come out and say, oh, my business started, we grew to 7 figures in 1 year. And it's like, nobody does that. Nobody. It takes so much legwork. It takes so much
Even
initial.
Amazon didn't do that.
Yeah, I'm like, Amazon didn't something like that. But it takes so much initial legwork, and if you don't have the capital, like, you are going to be dead in the water to like trying to figure it out. Like, it's a whole lot. This is why business planning is important.
Yeah, and just, and again, I'm a huge fan of hers, but that makes me, that song where she talks about, I'm going to move to Atlanta and start me a business, like, that's easy.
It's not, and I mean, she knows that. She's been in the game for a long time. Like,
yeah, but I mean, and it's a good goal to have, but it's not just something you can just wake up and do. So very important on that as well. But I got some unbelievable questions here from the students. This first one is Jakia Luckett Jr. And she asked, if you absolutely have to take out a student loan, what are some healthy ways to manage it?
Yeah. So like we, talked about earlier, take the money you need, pay for the things you need. If you don't, and you end up getting a refund check that you're not using, send it back. Like, send it back to the company. Don't take it, because, and also knowing the difference between an unsubsidized loan and a subsidized loan and where you fall on that spectrum. If it's a subsidized loan, you're not going to be paying interest right away. But if it's an unsubsidized loan, you are paying interest from the moment you get that money. So if you do not need it, send it back to the company.
Yeah, she's interested in going to an HBCU, so I know that they will work with people on that type of stuff. But like you said, it's very important to manage that. Now, this is Rodarius Williams. He's a senior, and he's got 2 questions, and both of these are great. I'll do the first one first. He said, what is a financial plan you would recommend for someone my age 17 who wants to go to college?
Yeah, I mean, so the whole point of financial planning is really for income purposes and cash flow. So do you plan on working while you're in college, like getting a work study job or maybe getting a part-time job and using that money to maybe pay for an apartment or even just start yourself like a little like investment account or something. It really would have to know a little bit more kind of about what you are going for exactly. But financial planning is more financial planning for your income. But at this moment in time, your best asset is yourself. So you going to college, you making sure your head stays on straight, getting your degree, attending class, showing up, making sure your teachers know your name, because that's also very, very important, is making sure your teachers know who you are. It will be the difference between an A and a B or an A and a C in a class, and I can attest to that.
Yep.
There have been some classes where my grades did not give me an A, but because my teacher knew me, I got an A. So you are your best asset. Take care of yourself. And then when you start producing cash flow and like real like income, then you can figure out kind of just send me a message or something. We'll talk.
Yeah, and then he's also asking, would it be smart to invest in stock if I still have a goal of going to college?
Yeah, it's always smart to invest. It is always smart to invest, but just don't invest money that you're gonna need. If you're going to college and you're working just to have a little pocket change, then cool, invest your money. But if you're working because you actually got bills to pay and you need those dollars to pay for your books and pay for your schooling and stuff, then don't do that to yourself.
This is Robert Branson. He's a sophomore, and he asked, in what ways do you feel people have benefited from you helping them with their finance?
Yeah, so I will say financial planning is a long-term game. It's a long game. So for most people, you're not going to see the benefit right away from financial planning, because the whole point of it being considered a plan is because you actually have to get to the end of the scenario for you to see the favorable outcome. It's just like with football, you plan for the game, like you see the plays, whatever. Everything's not going to happen that way. The other team is going to do something that's going to catch you off guard. Same with life. Stuff in life is going to happen. It's going to catch you off guard. You're going to have to revise the plan, go back to the drawing board, figure out something else. But sometimes you get to the end of the game, it's not the outcome you wanted. And other times it's like, it might have been very, very messy, but you got there. And that's pretty much the same how financial planning works. Like you get to you try to plan for all contingencies, but sometimes you can't. You might have to call it audible a couple of times, but that's really, it's a long-term game. And honestly, the more immediate result comes from more like what they like to call the money coaching world. So like helping with budgeting, helping with like money mindset and how you think about things, and like how you saw your parents and the people around you handling money, and how to transition those thoughts into thoughts that actually serve you moving forward, so you don't keep making the same mistakes that you saw being made, and you handle money out of what you know to do instead of the best thing for you to do. And those small habits are actually what compounds into much larger gains down the line.
Yeah, and that's a great segue to this next question. This is Kwame Johnson. He's actually watching from home today. He's a sophomore, and he asked, what is the most helpful tip you can tell someone who wants to start saving money?
Yeah. Honestly, if you don't already have a bank account, go get yourself one. And if you have a job in which you're making a little money, start setting some money aside, every time you get paid, whether that be 10, 15, 20%, put it away, save it for later, whether that be you want to get to a goal of like saving $1,000 to put in your first investments and, buy yourself a couple of shares or whatever, but have a goal attached to it. Because if you're saving for nothing, then you're not going to keep saving. So whether that be saving for a big trip or saving for, something you want to buy, just getting yourself into the habit of putting a small portion away every time you get money, that's what will develop the habit. So down the line, when you actually do get like a real salary or like a real large income, then you already have that habit ingrained in you. Like, all right, this is my check. I'm not living off of all of this. And like learning to live on as little well, not as little, but like as less as possible. So yeah.
That's a great segue into this question. This is DeMarnez Griffin. He's a senior, and he asked, would it be smart or no, would it be safe for me to use an online bank?
Yeah. Online banks are I won't say all of them, but for the most part, the reputable ones. And no shade to the new stuff that's out here, but I like the old tried and true. So I mean, I love Ally as an online bank, but sticking with the traditional, like Marcus, which is connected with Goldman Sachs, American Express, these companies aren't going anywhere. So, and they typically offer like a higher interest rate than the other small ones as well, because they're backed by a large company that has a lot of capital, so they can give you more. So just some things to take into consideration.
Yeah, and putting money on a Cash App card is not having a bank account.
No, it's not. Cash App is not, it's not a bank. It is an intermediary in which to transition money, but it is not designed for storing money.
Absolutely.
So don't fall into that.
I mean, yeah, it has its place. I use it too when I need to, but it's not. It should not be your go-to place for the only place you're putting money. I've just got one more from the students, and this is Tatiana Jackson. She's a sophomore, and she asked, "What was the main motivation you had to start your own business?"
Main motivation, I would say I'm a little bit of a rebel. So when I see things not being done in the most optimal, effective, or efficient way they can, it really bothers me, because I am very much a logical person, very rational, and I just come to the point where it's like, all right. And this used to be my word in high school, and I've learned to stop saying it, but like my phrase used to always be, "This is stupid. We can do this much better." Now, obviously, you can't tell your bosses that, but I just came to the realization, like, okay, if I can't do what I want to do here, then I'm gonna move or create my own space to where I can do it, and not even necessarily the way I want to, but I want to have, but I know the outcome in which I desire to have. Now, how it happens, I don't really care. Every time I think it's going to happen one way, it ends up happening a different way. But being able to have the outcome I want to have, and the impact on a specific group of people that I want to have, is really what led to like my decision to kind of just go off on my own and like freelance and build something that I can say I built. And also, when building, being somewhere where it's like, I'm building this and I have 100% equity in it, versus it belongs to now this company.
Yeah. And the sense of pride has got to be great. But we're almost out of time. And again, we thank you so much for joining us. Just such great knowledge and fitness in your schedule. But before we go, I really want you to, let these young people know, especially these young Black kids, why it is so important to know about this stuff. Because like we said, they may think it's dumb. They think this is never going to apply to me. I'm just 15 years old. But how can not being familiar with these financial principles really hurt you in the long run if you don't know?
Yeah. So I have an online mentor. He doesn't know me yet, but he will. And he says this all the time. It's like, I just had it in my head. Okay. It's like anything, like any principle that you are not working is working on you. So anything that you don't know, somebody else does, and you're paying for the fact that they know it and you don't. So you don't want to be ignorant to the fact, and especially being in this country as a Black individual, if you're just being honest with yourself, the system is based on your ignorance, and it's based on you remaining ignorant.
There you go.
So don't let people profit off of your ignorance, especially when you have literally the World Wide Web in your hand.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't have said it any better. What great advice. And again, as always, we thank you. Kayla Walter, all the way from Washington, D.C. Join us, KaylaWalter.com, and all of her social media is on there. Great social media follow, up and coming YouTube star, great YouTube channel. And I will definitely get you that information for our last DMV guest as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I talk to you soon, my friend. Go Tigers.
All right. Go Tigers.